Hodkinson. That was a very enlightening speech. Thank you for your information. Roger, are you speaking Saturday night at the Vine? Okay. So that's probably a little bit more of a longer presentation than here. Okay. So if you want your friends and family that aren't here to hear him speak about some of the stuff here, the Church on the Vine on 149th Street, can't remember what time it is, but on Saturday night, there will be some more information. Okay. Okay, just wait.
I did forget to say something, and it's this. Changing topic into the connection between all of that and politics. Look, what's going on now, as are you speaking, Dennis? Yeah, you'll hear Dennis, Dr. Modre, articulate this in great detail about why we have to separate. But come the fall, things are going to get worse. The child emperor, fancy socks, boy blunder, you know who I'm talking about. That guy that has a seance with his daddy every evening to figure out what he's going to do the next day. Yeah, it's going to get worse. But remember Napoleon's famous statement, never stop your enemy from screwing up. They're easier to beat. When the likes of Alex Berenson and co.
How many people have been to a formal APP event? How many have not? Okay. How many of you would like to sign up with APP and the petition? Okay. Put your hands up, and I'm going to get Lindy to come around with the clipboard. I don't know where she is, but she can come around, and she'll be coming around. And if you see her coming around with clipboard to get some signatures, just kind of wave her on over, okay? So our next speaker is known as the North American pioneer of heart and lung transplants, implementing the first heart and lung transplantation program in Western Canada, performing the first heart transplant in 1985, the first combined transplant of the heart and both lungs in 1986. The success of his programs grew to be the largest and most successful in Canada and one of the largest programs in North America. He's been recognized with numerous awards for excellence in medicine and in the community. He is an exceptional community leader and a brilliant mind, and he has always advocated for the overall health and well-being of the people. He is the key driver in this project as the CEO of Alberta Prosperity Project. On top of that, he has been an individual has tremendous political influence in the eras of Premiers Getty, Klein, and Stelmach. And here to talk today about Alberta prosperity and freedom through independence is Dr. Dennis Modre.
Well, thank you, Al. And want to start off with and say to Al and Lois, thank you very much for this wonderful evening and dinner and a well-deserved hand. Very good. So I know a number of you have heard me speak before. Love to see the little ones around. It's fantastic. I have 8 grandkids myself. But in any case, I was thinking as I was listening to Michael and Roger, you know, we really are in a difficult situation at this particular time, and I would say that we're facing an existential threat to our very way of life, to our individual freedoms and rights and our prosperity if we do nothing. By way of a show of hands, how many people here are pleased with the performance of our federal government? Yeah, I always questioned Alan's intelligence, and now I know for sure. So, you know, it's interesting because on January the 4th of this year, there was a poll in Alberta, and 93% of Albertans are disillusioned with the federal government. But the question is what are we going to do about it? So think about this sort of as a metaphor. If you get kicked in the shin, it hurts, right? And if you keep your leg there and you get kicked again, it's going to hurt even more, right? Well, at what point when someone keeps kicking you in the shin, are you going to move your leg? Well, Alberta's been kicked in the shin and elsewhere for 116 years. And we haven't had one federal or provincial government that's ever protected our individual freedoms, rights, prosperity, or self-determination. And here we are now. So what are we going to do about it? We have 3 options. We have the do nothing option. We have the independence options, and there are 2. Next question. How many people would prefer that Alberta remain in Canada, but with a far better deal in which we control our wealth and control our affairs? As just by a show of hands, how many people would prefer that we fix our circumstances in Confederation, control our wealth, and control our affairs? Just by a show of hands, how many people are in favor of that? Okay, that's great, because that's representative of what we see at most of our events, whether there's 100 people there or 1,400 people. That's roughly the percentage. Now, how many people here would prefer that Alberta become a new independent, sovereign, constitutional republic? And that, again, is, relatively speaking, the outcome. Now, I think it's really important for everybody to understand these 3 options that we have. Now, option 1 is the do nothing option, and it kind of relates to the Great Reset. So how many people here are in favor of the Great Reset? Please raise your hand. So not too many people. How many people feel, in fact, nobody. How many people here feel that we're over-governed, over-regulated, and overtaxed? How many people here would like freedom from wokeness, cancel culture, critical race theory? All right. See, this is an exercise program. All right. Now, so when you think about this, you're not in favor of the Great Reset, but what are we going to do about it? And I want to just share some information with you because it touches on what Roger has said and what Michael has said with respect to this. So you know that the Great Reset is a highly influential movement by the global elites of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations who have signed a contract called Agenda 2030. And the purpose of that is to reset the global economy and to restructure the function of society, how it interacts, using banks, governance agencies, and environmental, social, and governance metrics to control all of us, to control billions of people. And so the way it'll work, of course, is you'll get a digital ID. Then there will be a programmable digital currency and an ESG score. And your ability to access your finances, to purchase anything, to travel anywhere by any means will be determined based on your compliance with the federal government that can track you now and control you in everything that you do and everything that you buy and everywhere you go. That is exactly what's coming. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it actually isn't. And it's well articulated on their website. And already touched on is the whole concept of they will own nothing and be happy. I want you to, this is a connect the dots sort of thing as well. And it relates to what Roger was talking about with respect to the vaccines. So think about what's happening with fertilizer right now. What is the purpose of reducing fertilizer? Ostensibly, it's to limit carbon emissions, ostensibly. Same thing with controlling our energy industry by reducing our hydrocarbon output in this province by 42% by 2030. And it's already started. Why is this happening? It's happening because they want us to be compromised with respect to food and energy security. Why is that? Well, it's because if you listen to a narrative that was recorded at a World Economic Forum, this will connect the dots for you. An individual speaker said these words: "We need to eliminate billions of people. They will find peace in the grave." Now, for someone who's had a career operating on people, I operated on over 7,000 patients during my active career and 3,000 in training. I find this really disheartening, maddening, and very sad that this level of man's inhumanity to man is truly genocidal. So now think about why they want to reduce agricultural output. That will lead to starvation. Why do they want to reduce energy output? That is going to lead to people having a great deal of difficulty in very hot climates remaining cool, and in very cold climates remaining warm. So this is what is coming. I want you to understand something else with respect to carbon, which I think a lot of people don't really understand. In Alberta, we produce 265.8 million metric tons, or megatons, if you will. That is 0.0082 of global carbon emissions. That's really important to understand that. That's 0.82% of worldwide CO2 emissions. And so we're told that we are responsible for the climate warming and that apocalypse is coming if we do nothing. Now, what they don't take into account is our carbon sink. In other words, the amount of CO2 that we produce is massively resorbed. As much as 8 to 10 times as much CO2 as we produce is absorbed by our boreal forests, agricultural lands, swamps, and muskeg. But you don't hear anything about that. Why is that? Because the whole purpose of the climate argument is to shift wealth, is to redistribute wealth in society. Now, when Maurice Strong out of Winnipeg, the billionaire oil guy, when he first conceived of this idea to use climate change to redistribute wealth, at that time, at least there was some sense that he had to redistribute it from first world nations to third world nations. But now with the Davis Group, the WEF and the UN coming together the way they have, now what they want to do is they want to cull the middle class and create an elite superclass of the super wealthy and a perpetual underclass. This is part of the plan now. It's so crystal clear when you look at it. The question is what are we going to do about it? How are we going to stop this from occurring? How are we going to stop owning nothing and being happy? I don't think anybody here likes that concept. Well, our options are to try and fix Alberta's circumstances in Confederation, but let me just tell you the impossibility of that. And it absolutely is impossible. And the reasons it is impossible because of the barriers. When you understand history and you understand the electoral imbalance, and Michael spoke about that, and the constitutional hurdles, you realize that's impossible. But from a historical point of view, the fix was in 1904. And it was in 1904 when Clifford Sifton said, he was the Minister of the Interior that brought, in the Liberal government of Sir Wilfrid Laurier, that brought Alberta and Saskatchewan into Confederation. But he said in 1904 that we desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, Canadian patriots, of course, were those people living in Quebec and Ontario, but we desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our people, where? In the East, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way contribute to our prosperity. And nothing has changed in 116 years. We were a colony in 1905 when we were incorporated into Canada, and we remain a colony now to serve the interests of the East at our expense. Now, I got to touch on something that Michael said as well, just to put this in sharp focus, why nothing will change. The National Energy Policy, which was implemented in 1980, was implemented as a result of a massive demographic shift of people and businesses coming to Calgary, all major banks moving their to Alberta, all major banks moving their head offices to Calgary, because Alberta was becoming the economic center of power in Canada at that time. But that collided with the Quebec secessionist movement. And so the National Energy Policy, the real purposes of the National Energy Policy were two things. One, and this is really important to understand because this is never going to change. Number one, it was to prevent Alberta from ever again becoming the center of economic power in Canada. And number two, to buy Quebec's loyalty to Canada with Alberta's wealth. Very important to understand because that's the way it was then. That's the way it is now. Nothing has changed. And like I said earlier, not one federal or provincial government has ever protected our individual freedoms, rights, or prosperity. Very important to understand that. From an electoral imbalance perspective, we don't have representation by population. That's the way Confederation was designed, which means that, as just to reiterate, so it's clearly in everybody's mind, every single federal election will be decided by voter-rich Quebec and Ontario, number one. And number two, it doesn't matter the party that wants to be elected at the federal level or is in power, they will always pander to the wishes of Quebec and Ontario at Alberta's expense. And then finally, the constitutional hurdles. And there are 5. In other words, if you want to fix Alberta's circumstances in Confederation, you need to change the Constitution. And in order to do that, you need to have a majority vote in the House of Commons, in the Senate. You have to have 7 of 10 provincial legislatures representing 50% of the population also voting in favor of Alberta. And how do you think Quebec would vote, say, on the issue of opening the Constitution to end equalization when they get 2 of every $3 of equalization? I mean, for heaven's sakes, we've given nearly $700 billion to the federal government. Since 1965, we haven't gotten a cent back. That's insane. And then the 4th hurdle is Quebec believes that it has a veto, and they never even signed the 1982 Constitution Act. And they've demonstrated that they have a veto a month or so ago by passing in their legislature Bill 96, which abridges minority language rights in Quebec against the Constitution. And is the federal government going to challenge that? Of course not. So therefore, de facto, they have a veto. And then finally, the Supreme Court itself. Any constitutional battle will be adjudicated by the Supreme Court. And of course, the Supreme Court's appointed from the Prime Minister's office. And there are 9 justices, 3 from Quebec, 3 from Ontario, 1 from the Maritimes, 2 from all of Western Canada. How do you think the Supreme Court would vote on, for example, ending equalization if it was a constitutional battle. Not going to happen. So you see the problem, folks, with respect to trying to fix Alberta's circumstances in Confederation. It's been tried, it's been tried, it's been tried and tried and tried and tried and tried again, and it constantly fails. And it will fail again because Alberta has no leverage with the federal government. It has none. There have been two attempts to change the Constitution. One was the Meech Lake Accord and the other was the Charlottetown Accord. They both failed. So I think you can be sure that fixing Alberta's circumstances in Confederation is wishful thinking. It just can't happen. And it won't happen. And history proves it. And the hurdles, constitutional hurdles, prove it. So that leaves the option of Alberta charting a new path forward as an independent, sovereign, constitutional republic. And here is the beauty of what the Alberta Prosperity Project is all about. And just for clarity, the Alberta Prosperity Society is a registered society with a board of directors. It governs the Alberta Prosperity Project. The Alberta Prosperity Project is designed to unite and inspire Albertans to protect their interests, their individual freedoms, rights, prosperity, and self-determination by enabling Alberta to chart a new path forward as an independent nation. And for those who want Alberta to remain in Confederation but with a better deal, and those who want Alberta to leave Canada and form a new nation, the one thing that can bring them together is the whole concept of leverage, because the only leverage that we have if we all come together is the leverage of a successful referendum on independence, because as Michael pointed out, that is what permits or compels an obligation to negotiate with Alberta. But now they're negotiating with Alberta where Alberta is on an equal footing with the federal government. So what the Alberta Prosperity Project is intending on doing is growing the membership to 500,000, 1 million people or more. And why that's important is because of what some of you may have heard of the 3.5% rule, coined by a Harvard professor by the name of Erica Chenoweth. And she studied societal movements over a couple of hundred years, and she determined that 3.5% of a population can change the direction of that society. So what we're doing has never been done before. That's why it can work. That's why it's in your control. So if we can come together and we can grow the membership to 500,000, 1 million people or more, we will control our own destiny. We can control the outcome of the 2023 election. We can control what government does. Now, where are we at this particular point? Well, we've engaged with Rebel News in terms of getting the message out, paid social media. We're coming on board with Western Standard after negotiating for a couple of months. Digital billboard advertising, and Touch Broadcasting Canada, 5 FM channels. The whole point is if you can't engage people, which is what you need to do first, you can't educate them. So we need to engage with people, have a conversation with them, and explain to them what's coming and how brilliant the future could be as an independent nation. So how are we going about doing this? Well, it's like I said, the whole advertising campaign is rolling out. We've been working on this for a couple of years, but we just started rolling things out at the end of February. So at present, we've got about 137 educational chapters set up throughout the province. We have over 1 million hits on social media and over 500,000 people following us on social media. And we have, at this point, only just over 8,000 members. And so we need to convert those people to become full members. Because as Ralph Klein used to say about government, Find a parade and get in front of it. Find a movement and get in front of it. So we're creating that movement that government has to get in front of, a party has to get in front of if they want to be elected and if they want to remain in power. It's always been in your control, folks. Always been in your control. So here's the way it would work. You elect an independence-focused government in May of 2023. That government takes control of what it can legally within the Constitution. 5 things: policing, pensions, immigration, employment insurance, and provincial tax collection, which sets the stage for taking control of federal tax collection. That all can be done within 18 to 24 months. Think about that, 18 to 24 months from next May. At the same time that the government is taking control of those things, it's trying to negotiate on taking control of federal taxation. It's trying to end Bill C-69, Bill C-48. It's trying to end the carbon tax. It's trying to end equalization. It's trying to get out from under the Canada Health Act, which restricts creative solutions to healthcare. And by the way, if you didn't know this, on November the 2nd of 2021, the Fraser Institute released a report which evaluated healthcare systems around the world. And the Canadian healthcare system functions in the lowest quartile of quality at the highest quartile of cost. And having worked in this system for 30 years, I can tell you it was maddening to deal with the inefficiency and the problem with people waiting on the wait list and dying before they could get their surgery. So those things that the next provincial government can take control of, I've outlined. Those things that we need the next provincial government to take control of, we will not be able to. And they will demonstrate to the public the intransigence of the federal government. In so doing, they set the stage now for a referendum on independence. At the same time, between now and 24 to 36 months from now, the Alberta Prosperity Project is educating people on the brilliant future that lies ahead of us as an independent nation. We've thought through all of the fear-mongering that's going to occur, the things that the federal government might say or do, that the other NGOs might say or do, what other countries might say or do. We've thought through all of these things and we have answers for them. So don't be frightened by the fear-mongering. How many people here are pensioners? Raise your hand. How would you like $3 billion more added to your pension plan? Well, in Alberta. Well, here's the point. We overfund the pension plan by $3 billion a year. That would all come back immediately. Within 18 months of now, that could happen. Now, how many people here are working and paying income tax right now? How would you like a flat 8 to 10% tax? Well, we send somewhere between $55 and $60 billion in federal taxes to Ottawa to redistribute to virtue signaling causes that we don't agree with, dictatorships around the world, and Quebec. You're right. Think about this. We only get 27 billion of that 60 billion back. That means if we were an independent nation, we would have control of all that 60 billion, another 33 billion. Think about what that would do for everybody in this province. How many people here are homeowners and don't pay a mortgage? You think you own your home, right? Don't pay your taxes and you'll find out who owns your home. So in other words, we don't have property rights in this country either. There would be an opportunity in this province as a new nation to actually eliminate property tax. As surprising as that may seem, it is actually possible. Now, there's one other thing. You've probably heard it said that if Alberta was holding a referendum on independence or became an independent nation, that capital would flee Alberta. Businesses would move out. It would create economic chaos. Ask yourself this question. If Alberta has the most favorable regulatory environment and the best tax environment in the world, where do you think business will go? It'll come here. Now, they use the Quebec example because in the last referendum, it is true, there were a number of Quebec companies that left Quebec and went to Ontario. But it wasn't because of the issue of economic chaos. It was because if the referendum had been successful, there would have been a language and a cultural problem that those businesses would have had to deal with, and they didn't want to deal with it because many of those were Anglo-based businesses. So again, you need to understand the history and you need to understand why certain things happened, but don't be afraid of independence. But do please get involved with what we are doing, because what we're doing has never been done before. And there is an opportunity for us to protect ourselves, to protect our businesses, to protect our future and our children's future if we all come together for common cause. And it's really that simple. It's not very complicated. It's always been in your control. So that's pretty much about all I have to say. But at this particular point, if anybody's got a really relevant question, come on up, and we got one mic here so everybody can hear, and we could maybe take a couple of questions if anybody's got a question or two. Don't be shy. All right. Oh, so Gary has just asked the question. There's a UCP leadership debate that's occurring on August the 25th. And Rebel News and the Alberta Prosperity Project are moderating that debate. It's going to be held in Hall D in the Shaw Convention Center, and anybody who's interested can get a ticket and come. The reason we're doing this is because what we want to do is use the UCP MLA candidates' own words to educate the public. So if the emperor has no clothes, that will be evident. And it may well be, just to titillate you all a little bit, that the questions that Ezra Levant and myself, as the co-moderators, will pose might be very different than the questions that are posed by the other leadership debates that take place. So I'll just leave you with that. Thank you very much.